Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
I really did want to break this myth that the West perpetrates of about Pakistan, that it's all, bomb blasts and slums and this and that. It's actually just like any other city. We have normal lives. I mean, we go to work, we wake up in the morning, we get ready, we take a shower. We have running water. So a lot of people in the West think that we don't even have running water here, or the concept of proper bathrooms or whatever. I mean, Lahore is beautiful, and yeah, we go to work, we come back, and the roads are fine. People are following. There is some. Yes, the traffic could be better, but other than that, we now have sidewalks for people who need to use a wheelchair. So now they're building those sidewalks as well for people who need a wheelchair. So these kind of things are now coming in.
Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's Andrew. I am so excited to let you all know that we are now in the top 40 best liberal arts podcasts list that got sent to me, and we're number 3. So thank you all for listening to the podcast. And I just really appreciate that you keep spreading the word. So please make sure you follow us on social media. Instagram is Ivory Tower Boiler Room, TikTok, Dr. Rimby, and please review us on Apple, Spotify. All of it helps. So I hope you just enjoy this episode. And as always, remember, there is an ad-free version on our Patreon. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Andrew Rimby with the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. And I'm so excited for this conversation that, my guest and I have been wanting to have, and there was some rescheduling, but, he's now joining me from Pakistan. I'm here in North Jersey with the site of Manhattan near me. So I'm so excited to introduce you all to Awais Khan, who has just blown me away on Instagram with all of the books that he recommends. I'm sure he'll talk about his writing, editing business that he also does when he's not writing himself. So to introduce you to him, he was born in Lahore, Pakistan. He is a graduate of the University of Western Ontario and Durham University, and he studied creative writing at Faber Academy, which I know is where the inspiration of In the Company of Strangers came from, that program and time. I know his first novel was years in the making. I think 2012 is what I remember reading, and then it got published in 2022. In his free time, he likes to read mostly historical fiction and psychological thrillers, which are also probably my favorite genres. So welcome to the podcast, Awais, to talk about In the Company of Strangers, and your other book, which follows. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here. And like you said, we've been having some to and fro chats, and it's finally to be here. And just to offer a little correction here, it was actually published first in 2019. So this one, the edition you have, was published in 2022. So you're right in a way as well.
No, I'm glad for that correction. So I think that what I find so interesting is it's not all the time that I'm joined with a male author who fits into the romance genre. And I kind of wanted to bring that up right away because I'm sure you've had maybe some of your readers or others, are they surprised to see the identity behind the writer of In the Company of Strangers?
Yes, absolutely. And I have to suffer through a lot of such questions where people ask me that who is this character based on, and who did you, who in Pakistani society is this based on? I'm like, it's actually based on nobody. It's just the fact that that is what fiction is. That it's about everyone and no one. So that's how fiction is, and we have to really, I think, understand that concept. It is not that. Especially in Pakistan, there is a great deal of misconception where people associate whatever they read in a book as an author's personal beliefs. And I keep telling them that no, these are not my personal beliefs at all. It's just that this is how the character is behaving. So, you could be writing about a murderer, but that doesn't mean you're a murderer. So
Yes,
it's very
very
important to
true.
make that distinction. Yeah.
If that was the case, there would be a lot of writers locked
I
up
know.
on criminal
That also,
charges. Stephen
yeah,
King
yeah,
would be in trouble. So,
yeah, yeah,
just like
absolutely.
your upbringing when it comes to literature, how did literature find its way to you? Like, do you remember those experiences that you had as a young reader?
Yes, I mean, I remember that back when I was growing up in the 90s, as a child in the 90s, we only had this one or two big bookshops in Lahore. Now there are more, but back then there was just, and one of them was close to where I lived. It was called Book Gallery, and I remember that even now I remember that as a kid, my parents would take me out for toys or whatever, and I'm like, no, no, I want to go to Book Gallery, and there I'd buy whatever for my age, whatever books I could, and that's where it all started. And my parents never really in Pakistan there is this a great deal of there's this belief that parents have that their children should only be doctors or engineers or whatever, but my parents never really put those stipulations on me, and they were like, if you're happy reading, then you're happy reading. So it was kind of like that. So yeah, it was definitely from the start, from as for as long as I can remember, I've loved reading. So,
So, like in that bookstore, um, were you reading in English or like I know there's a large tradition of in uh like South Asian communities like English reading or English speaking. I mean, I know like when I have authors who are from India, they'll talk about the British education system because of colonialism. I think that's similar in Pakistan. Um, s-
it,
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go
It's
ahead.
basically we used to be the one country before 1947, and that one country was ruled by the British. So yeah. So this, I think it's prevalent in every country that was ever ruled by the British, that they all prioritize English, and even today there is a huge colonial hangover that people in Pakistan have, and also people in India, Bangladesh, Nigeria, South Africa, everywhere, anywhere where they have British influence, you'll find that they have this, I don't know, this unreasonable love for English language. And I mean, you and I could both be sitting doing a talk, and people would believe you and over me, even if you're wrong, because you speak English a certain way, and because you're, that uh, from the West. So that sort of thing hasn't really it's actually getting worse, I would say. And but then I also think it's important to know English. That's very important. And I went to an international school, so I started off reading in English and writing in English. I do know how to. I mean, I'm very fluent in Urdu, Saraiki, and I do know how to read Urdu as well. But it's not. I'm not that good with the vocabulary, so I can't read really complicated novels in Urdu. But other than that, I can do that. I can do everything.
So like when you were growing up, were because of that British hangover. I mean, British just hold on the culture, like where the classics, Dickens, Victorian literature, were they something that you were introduced to, or like was there another genre that you were more into? Like seeing that you really love historical fiction.
I, as a kid, I started off by reading all those, Enid Blyton. She was the most widely available author in Pakistan. I think she still is. And then obviously I went on to Hardy Boys and all those usual books that kids used to read back back in the day. I think I even sampled a bit of Sweet Valley as well, but my female cousins used to read it, so I would also, but I never really liked Sweet Valley as such. But yeah, it started off with Enid Blyton and all of these authors for children, Roald Dahl,
Hmm.
and then I think in school we were introduced to classics. So then I remembered the Railway Children. We started off with Railway Children, Iceberg Hermit, and all of that. And then as we grew older, then we were introduced to Dickens and Charlotte Bronte, Jane Austen, and all of that. So yeah, I think it's the school that was behind that. Otherwise, I don't know if I mean, we ultimately you do discover the classics anyway, but yeah, the school actively encouraged that. We used to have class. I mean, Jane Eyre. It used to be our class reader. So yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, so were you introduced though to like bringing us into the territory you take us in with in the company of strangers and specifically your protagonist Mona, who I think is just fascinating as a psychological complex character. Were you introduced to Pakistani literature that did explore a culture of like what you bring us into, which is the elite or like those who are holding secrets? Like, did you know about authors who were Pakistani talking about like the topics that weren't really uh re- dining room or kitchen table issues, like affairs, infidelity, sexuality?
You see, the beautiful thing about Pakistani writing in English is that most of that is unorthodox. So you will find Pakistani literature in English. Uh, it's about all things that are not like you mentioned, or the high society and affairs and sexuality and all of that. These are all explored a lot by Pakistani authors who write English, but also who write in Urdu. Now the thing is that the people who read in Pakistan are very enlightened, very to some extent very liberal as well. So the people who don't like this stuff, the literature doesn't really reach them. So in a way, we sort of have a free hand on in what we can write about. As now, also there is this thing that uh, in Pakistan is like a series of bubbles. So people like the high society in Lahore, the high society in Karachi, Islamabad, the bigger cities, they all live in bubbles, and we don't really get to see what the real Pakistan is all about. So we live in those bubbles, and when you're in that bubble, you inevitably end up coming across people. And even if I am not that social, I ended up being in the high society, so I got that chance to observe them and how they behaved and what kind of stuff was going on behind the scenes and all the gossip and scandal and all of that. So it does come to one's attention, even if one is not actively a part of that society, because it's such a small circle. And Lahore is 15 million people live in the city, and I
Wow.
mean, trust me, if you're any party that you go to, any big restaurants you go to, you will always come across someone because that particular circle is very small. It's just a bubble.
Hmm.
So that's the thing.
Is there any kind of social caste system like with the way that like I was taught and it's definitely a something that is a Western, maybe just trying to show the West or America not having social class impact people's lives, even though I definitely think American social class is alive and well and bubbles exist. Like it's not like all the different social classes interact with each other, even though, the American dream tends to be used
Yeah.
as a way to show that like everyone is egalitarian, which if you see our politics is definitely not happening with those who are in the 1% and how they're exploiting the people in their daily lives. But like, when I think of um Asia as a continent, but specifically like South Asian communities, we were always taught about, certain people have access to education depending on their social class. And like it's really hard to move from one class to the next. Like, is that something that still impacts Pakistani society?
Well, in Pakistan, the caste system was traditionally, I think, more of a thing in India. I'm not sure what the case is now, but in Pakistan, it's not. I mean, there are no physical barriers stopping you from jumping into a particular class. It's all about who has the money. So if you
Mm.
have the money, you can send your kids to the best private schools in Pakistan, and nobody can stop them from going to those schools. Be it they can be any religion at all, they will still be admitted if they can afford the fee. So there's nothing. So these kind of, obviously social classes do exist, and if you don't have the money and the resources, then you can't really get into that. I mean, if you don't have that kind of money, you can't eat at a high end restaurant in Lahore. But if you have money, then nobody will stop you at the door. That because you're dressed a certain way, you can't go inside. It's all about the money. So if you have the money in Pakistan, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's interesting. And when it comes to topics or themes, like I remember talking to an author who he explored the LGBT communities in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, and like saying that like these communities exist, but they exist more underground as a
Yeah.
subculture. But like even in bookstores, there's some books that aren't allowed to be shown or like aren't available because of like being in a Muslim majority country and that idea of like respect and not showing intimacy in public, which can impact like what art is available. Is that something, that idea of like respect or um, what's acceptable conversations in public, even like the idea of PDA, is that something that you're surrounded by or? Not necessarily. Like that idea of showing
Um,
intimacy in public.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very funny that you mentioned intimacy in public. Generally, yes, it's very much frowned upon in Pakistan. You can't really show any sort of intimacy in public that much. I mean, nobody does that. But I have noticed that in cafes and coffee shops, you will see that uh, boys will casually, throw their arm around their girlfriend's shoulder or something like that. Very briefly, they'll do that. But the funny thing is that men, like in public, they'll hold hands, but it's just a very friendly thing. It's not intimacy as in anything sexual. It's just and it's really nice to see that they can hold hands and walk, and people in the West would mistake it as something else,
Hmm.
but it's actually they're just walking around holding hands. But yes, you can't really hold hand with a woman, maybe. But I think rules are bent all the time, and Pakistan is much more progressive and liberal than the West, portrays it. So anything basically goes. And with by public, what I mean is on the road. So in
Hmm.
parties, in a society, in restaurants, things are different. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's
yeah.
kind of like in America. Um, and I think this gets us exactly to what I know you've talked about um, as even an inspiration for In the Company of Strangers, which is this idea of the West creating this myth about Pakistan, like thinking of it as constantly under turmoil, constantly warfare happening, or like that there's not um, a cosmopolitan culture that exists, which obviously it does. I mean, 15 million people living in a city that is more immense than New York City.
Yeah.
And that's our biggest city in America, which I'm so curious about is that idea of like the West creating this kind of mythos of well, we're so different than what's happening, in, say, a Muslim majority country or, say, in the East. But we have areas in America where I would feel uncomfortable walking with my husband hand in hand and kissing him on the even cheek because of, say, really conservative communities. So it's not like it doesn't exist here in America. So like why was it important for you to like think about how the West and your experience like going to the West for education to try to like just break these myths apart and break them down.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. In every city in the world, there are areas that will be that are very unsafe, and I think the same is true for cities of Pakistan. Lahore is our second largest city. The biggest one is Karachi, which is 25 million people. So it is like I think that given the size of these cities, I can't talk about Karachi, speak for Karachi because I'm not from there, but Lahore is very well managed, all things considered. And I really did want to break this myth that the West purports of about Pakistan, that it's all bomb blasts and slums and this and that. It's actually just like any other city. We have normal lives. I mean, we go to work,
Mhm.
we wake up in the morning, we get ready, we take a shower. We have running water. So
Yeah.
a lot of people in the West think that we don't even have running water here, or the concept of proper bathrooms or whatever. I mean, Lahore is beautiful, and yeah, we go to work, we come back, and the roads are fine. People are following. There is some. Yes, the traffic could be better, but other than that, it's we now have sidewalks for people who need to use a wheelchair. So now they're building
Mhm.
those sidewalks as well for people who need a wheelchair. So these kind of things are now coming in to Lahore. So you can imagine that it must have reached that potential, that point in infrastructure, that now they're introducing these kind of things. So yeah, I really wanted to change the perception that the West holds about Pakistan, and because of that, what's portrayed in the media, a lot of people have that sense as well. And you see a lot of these TikTokers and influencers when they first come to Pakistan, and they're like, "Oh, we never thought Pakistan would be like that." I'm like, Pakistan is just like any other country in the world. I mean, yes, if you want to, uh, there are areas in the West that are a bit lawless, yes, but then so is the case with any country in the world. So you don't have to go. I've never been to those places, and I wouldn't go there. So it's just a matter of knowing uh, where to go and what to do in the country. So yeah.
So when you created this idea that your character Mona would be introduced to this like very well, and let me set the scene, right? She's married to this very cruel businessman, but then she gets introduced to this like literati, artsy, glamorous, very Great Gatsby. I mean, it's like something that comes to my mind with the 1920s and
Yeah.
that indulgence and decadence of these party life scenes. Like, why was it so important for you to like bring her into this very glamorous scene that exists that she wasn't aware of?
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by Chat GPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about Chat GPT work? It's the new way to use Chat GPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give Chat GPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
Why does anything exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? I think that's a question we all, as curious people, have asked ourselves. And let me tell you, Professor Stephen A. Simon's new book is so thought-provoking that I can't wait for you all to pick it up. He provides his experience as a professor of political science and philosophy to explore that question with such a variety of perspectives from science, religion, philosophy, and even mathematics. He helps us understand what could possibly explain the most fundamental fact of all, that anything exists. So you can get this from broadviewpress.com. The floodgates have opened with science fiction as a genre in my life because I owe this to my husband and I'm going to give him credit. He has really gotten me to think more about sci-fi, film, and literature. I have to say, Minority Report, Absolutely amazing. And Alien, I mean, who doesn't love that alien coming out of that human body in the first film? So, Professor Jason Haslam's new anthology provides a lot of exploration with all different short fiction, so many sci-fi authors, over 200 years, including sci-fi that explores indigenous futurism, feminist science fiction, Afrofuturism. Again, you can get this on broadviewpress.com. And last but not least, my upcoming episode with Professor Matthew James Vachinsky explores his book, which is Original Inquiry, A Guide to Research for Undergraduates, a great toolkit for all faculty out there who are just trying to find a book that helps their students understand how to collect research sources and then, right, the hardest part, build and organize their essay with all of these sources and to make a cohesive argument. I can't recommend Original Inquiry highly enough. So again, all three books can be found on broadviewpress.com. Use the promo code Ivory Tower for 20% off.
Are you a fan of classic Hollywood movies?
Are you a fan of queer cinema?
Then do we have the podcast for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Garcia.
And I'm Luke Del Mar.
And we are your hosts of That Old Gay Classic Cinema, where we take a look at some of the greatest films of all time and analyze them through a queer theoretical lens.
Let's be honest. LGBTQIA plus people have been a part of Hollywood since its inception, and this podcast celebrates those artists and entertainers of yesteryear while also taking a closer look at the queer-coded characters and stories in classic Hollywood films long before queer representation entered the mainstream.
So follow us down the road of classic cinema as we give you a guide to some of the films that touched our hearts, brains, and even gave us courage to be ourselves.
You can listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
All right, listeners, we're ready for our close-up.
Well, it was because she was, because she had lived a very sheltered life, not as a child, but as a married woman. And she had been following all the rules, doing whatever her husband wanted and all of that. So it was meant to be a sign of resistance, a sign of, rebellion for her to get into that society. That is, although her husband was part of that, but he never let her be a part of that as such. But the fact that she deliberately went into that was in her, and then he couldn't really say anything to her because he was a part of that society too. So by prohibiting her, he would have he would have had to stay back as well. But when she wasn't exposed to it at all, then he could get away with not letting her be a part of it. But now that she's exposed to it, then he couldn't really put a stop to it. So it was an act of rebellion for her, and the fact that she, despite being financially dependent on her husband, she found a way to live a little.
Yeah. Do you feel like, did any of that part of rebellious spirit come from your own upbringing? Or like, do you see yourself as rebelling against any traditional standards in life?
I don't know. I think maybe in my 30s now, maybe, but I remember back when I was a child and in my teens, I was a proper, I followed all the rules. I was a model student, a model child. And I think I lived in a house where my paternal grandmother reigned supreme. So I was brought up by the family matriarch. So we learned all sorts, me and my siblings and cousins, and we learned the importance of women empowerment from our grandmother. And she taught us not just that, but she was also very strict. But she taught us all these manners and etiquette and how to eat, how to walk, how to talk. All of that we learned from her. And yeah, I think that was our. Even though she was very strict on us, but we saw the importance of female empowerment through her. And I think that sort of had a trickle down effect on me years later when I wrote about, now that I write these kind of books mainly about women. I think all of that comes from being partly raised by my paternal grandmother. I mean, she was a force to be reckoned with. And towards the end, she had dementia. So it was really sad to see that decline as well of a once great woman. So yeah, so I think yeah, I wasn't a rule breaker as such, but now maybe yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So like you would never have talked back to your grandmother.
Oh
Like,
no, no, no.
so
I
like
could
if
not have
when
dared
you've
it.
seen like videos of young people cursing out their
Oh God.
grandparents or family, that would not have gone down
I
well.
That would have got me like a huge, a big slap across my face if I had, said anything. If I talked back to my mother, not as grandmother. I mean, not just grandmother, even my mother. I could never do that. I mean, that would have earned me a slap immediately, and it did. And Pakistani families are very. Now that I think about it, they are very strict, and they are strict to a huge extent. And I remember when I was a kid, if I was a model student, I used to get straight A's. But sometimes, it's life. Sometimes I'd get an F on some subject, and I'd start crying in class. And my teacher would come up, and this was grade 5, 6 that we're talking about. So I'm like 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And my teacher would come up and he'd be like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, "I'm crying because my mom will beat me at home." So, so it was kind of like that. And now when I, talk to my mother about it, and she's like, "Oh no, it was definitely not like that, and you're exaggerating it and all of that." But the thing is, the fear was there that I'd get slapped because of poor performance or something, and that is something a lot of children in Pakistan deal with. So all of that rebellion, it doesn't come naturally to Pakistani kids.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would never have talked back to my parents. And, if I did, which I know I did once or twice or a few times, uh, I learned the lesson. But it's interesting because when you're like, I was definitely like you, raised to be an overachiever, try to get as high of a, grade as possible, very bookwormy, there's a reason why I sit here now. But
Yeah.
like just that thirst I had for literature and actually at times here in the States, it kind of put me at odds with some of my classmates where they would like make fun of me for always reading. So it was actually to take your studies really seriously in America, you don't always get approval from your peers, or they're like, oh, that's like the artsy one, or,
Oh yeah,
sports
absolutely.
and those activities, especially for young men, are like really
Yeah.
part of a lot of the American school system. But like what I find so interesting is how it seems like the arts were a really strong presence in your upbringing. Like,
Yeah.
were you a
Yeah.
very artsy family?
Not the family, no, not at all. I come from a very, like I said, my parents were liberal. They are very liberal, but they were never really artsy in the sense. I mean, they didn't really have anything to do with books or anything. But my maternal grandfather, yes, he was a reader, and I think maybe I get it from him. So he had a library and everything, all of that. And I would, if I did something good or something, he'd like, "What do you want?" And like, I would like one book from your library. So he'd give me one book from his library. So that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'll tell you a very interesting thing that from my childhood, that I used to read all the time when I was a like maybe I think I was 12 or 13 at this time, and I was really into these classics. I was reading Dickens and Russian classics and all of that. And I remember that I passed my parents' bedroom once, and I overheard them. And my father was asking my mother that, Awais is always reading. Can you check what he is reading? Is he reading erotica? Because he's always reading something. And my mother was like, okay. And then I remember she came into my room and she's like just casually, "Oh, okay, so what do you read?" Oh, and she, pretended like it was nothing. And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I know what you're doing." And then I remember she went back and I followed her, and she was like, "Oh no, no, nothing. I just looked and it's all boring stuff that he's reading." And
As
and they
if
were
like
like,
she
"No,
thought you were like had an issue of Playboy magazine or
yeah, no,
something.
no, yes, Playboy or erotic magazine novels, right?" And she was like, "Oh no, actually, he was reading all these, dry classics," and they were very puzzled by the as to why they had a son like this who was reading, classics and all of that. And I sometimes remind them of this, and they completely deny it. My father's like, I never said that. I'm like, I literally heard you. And he's like, no, I didn't say it. So, now they deny it.
Well,
But
no,
yeah.
I love that. Well, and I actually was just at Barnes and Noble over Mother's Day, celebrating with my mom, my mother-in-law, and there was this beautiful Barnes and Noble in like, a shopping mall, as is popular here in Jersey. And like they actually were still selling Playboys in the magazines, like in the bag and all of that. But I mean, that kind of material, I know even for here, it's rare to find that in a store. And if it is, it's like hidden. But I mean, is there access to erotic literature? I mean, now I'm sure there's like romantic,
Well,
smut erotica.
The thing is, you see, you wouldn't find anything like Playboy in Pakistan. Definitely not, even today. And they're not even sold under the table or anything like that. But with erotica, the thing is, erotica, as in novels, that you can't really tell. So you could stock it, and I mean, I remember 50 Shades of Grey was being sold everywhere in Pakistan, and because it looked like a book, like a proper novel, it didn't really seem like it
Mhm.
would be erotic. So and it didn't seem like erotica at all. I remember I read the back cover, and it sounded to me like a tale of vampires or something, and I bought it. And when I started reading it, I'm like, and then the first scene came up, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is the only one. And then it just kept on getting darker and darker in terms of that. I'm like, am I reading erotica? And then I sort of realized, oh yes, I think it is an erotic novel. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can get erotic novels to some extent here, but I don't. Yeah, it's not. You see, if someone wants these things, they'll just look for them on Google or something. They'll look for them online, rather than going through trawling through books or whatever to read that. They'll just download a clip or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
we're
yeah,
here like, I mean, well, yeah, if you have a VPN, right, you could access
exactly.
Euphoria, which that show, I'm
Yeah,
sure is a very wild ride. But like even OnlyFan, like
yeah.
girls, like
I
there's a
mean,
whole industry here
yeah,
of material.
until recently, I had no idea what OnlyFans was, and I'm not very all this new age stuff. I have no idea usually, and I remember I was telling a friend of mine that I think I should make an OnlyFans because they seem to be very rich, he was like, "Do you even know what an OnlyFans is?" I'm like, "What? It is just you can talk about your books or whatever." He's like, "No, you're not going to be talking about your books on OnlyFans." And then when he showed me what OnlyFans, I'm like, oh, okay. So, a
You were
lot of
like,
people
oh,
here
maybe I
don't.
won't do that. I mean,
Definitely.
there are definitely some, book people who get into that industry, but it's a
I mean,
there.
if there are book people who just like to see me read a book, then yeah, I could make an OnlyFans. I mean, that's free money for me, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't think that's quite fair.
I think that you'd have to be reading your book without clothes on. So I
I
don't
know, yeah.
there's a
I was like, yeah,
they're
that's,
looking for something there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
So,
I think it's interesting though because um like even when you knew or like how did the idea come to you that you were going to really explore this idea of a woman finding satisfaction through romantic and sexual desire and like really explore this taboo of adultery. Like, I feel like that's a really powerful taboo to explore, specifically like from the country she's from. Looking for summer reads, The Gay and Lesbian Review, a bi-monthly magazine that features arts and culture conversations about the LGBT community, has you covered. The July and August issue is all about summer getaways and artists. So, for example, there are articles about David Hockney. There's an article about the sculpture in Central Park that some of you, if you've seen Angels in America, definitely recognize, by Emma Stebbins. So I can't wait for you all to get your hands on this issue. As always, there are TV reviews, film reviews, book reviews, theater reviews. So if you just don't know where to begin with LGBTQ literature, this is a great magazine to inspire you to add more books to your to be read pile. I love the Gay and Lesbian Review, and I'm so happy because I have a promo code for you. Go to glreview.org and get the print subscription or the digital subscription and put in ITBR choice for a free issue of the magazine.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
Welcome to Severed, a podcast week dropping new episodes every Monday. Severed True Crime and Severed Paranormal episodes deep dive into murder, mysteries, and the otherworldly in a concise format. A 7-minute story to frame the case with thoughtful analysis and our usual banter.
We sometimes find the lighter side of darker cases. We offer 3 spin-off shows, Severed Strange Stories, Severed Haunted You, and Severed Serial Killers that highlight the unusual to lighthearted topics from the digital dumpsters of true crime, haunted universities, and the minds of madness like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer.
We are your co-hosts. I'm Harry Chambers.
And I'm Drew Hudson. Listen on all major podcast platforms, including Rogue Media Network and Radio Garden State. Follow us on Instagram at severed_podcast.
Because you see, the thing is that all of this is brushed under the rug in Pakistan. It happens quite a bit, and people don't really talk about it because obviously it doesn't sound good. It doesn't. But yeah, it does happen, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing. Adultery is never a good thing for anyone. But the fact is that some women are in such abusive marriages and abusive relationships that they have no other avenue but to go somewhere else. And it's also about financial independence, that some women don't have that financial independence, which means that they can't completely cut themselves off from their husbands. And so I guess it was the fact that nobody wanted to talk about this that I wanted to talk about it. So yeah, I guess and then I guess I was very young as well. I was in my early 20s when I started writing it, so I guess that's one of the reasons as well. So yeah.
Well, and are there different rules? I mean, this is just a question that came to me as I'm reading your work. And like, you really do explore the different gender dynamics here. And I think it's really interesting having it come from your experience growing up in Pakistan, being a man in Pakistan, but like really, like you've said, being surrounded by powerful women in your life, to have this exploration that you do where like there's different rules for men than there are for women. I think in every country, but like specifically in where you bring us in Pakistan, like how has that idea of like what's acceptable for men versus what's acceptable for women, like how were you front row to that experience?
Well, yeah, you're right. I think being a man is a bit of a privilege in Pakistan, and yes, the rules are very different from men and women. I guess that's partly why I wanted to write about this issue. And yes, like I said, I've been raised in a family that that leaned towards women empowerment, and like I was brought up in a house where my own father was mortally afraid of his mother. So he never had the guts to say anything in front of his mother. So, in every single way, my grandmother reigned supreme in the household. So I guess that is why I wanted to explore some of that, because other people's experience was very different from my own. So a lot of people grew up in houses where women had no agency at all. And I used to hear stories in school from my friends and stuff, that their mothers had no agency at all, and they'd be like, our fathers are the ones, our grandfathers are the one who reign supreme. And I used to be very puzzled by that. But yeah, as I grew up, I noticed that it is a man's world in Pakistan, and that the household I grew up in was a bit of I guess, an exception to the rule. And I guess that's probably why I wanted to sort of shine a light on this, on women, because they don't really get a chance that much. And I know that it's probably as a man, I should. A lot of people complain that as a man I shouldn't be writing about this. But then I'm like, if I start thinking about what people will say, then I wouldn't get anything done in the world. And if I can write sensitively about a particular subject, then why shouldn't I?
Well, no, and I think it's important because, like, what do they expect? You to only write patriarchal or
Some
like
people do expect that.
bro culture kind of narratives?
Yeah.
I mean, like, does that idea of bro culture exist in a similar way in Pakistan? Like the
Mm.
manosphere, and I don't know if you know about all these like podcasters in America,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they're like spreading this like very traditional ideology of like men should be given access to like sex at all times. They should like get to do whatever they want in the house. It's like very, very toxic.
That is basically, it's a given in Pakistan already. So men don't really have to fight for it at all, and that is the saddest thing.
Mm,
That it comes it comes with the territory, and women are traditionally told that they have to be silent and be patient and all of that stuff. Women are told to do that, and like I said, for me, the realization came in my 20s when I realized that, okay, I am actually from a very different world, and Pakistan in general is very different. So yeah, but the fact that the podcasts and all of that, the bro culture that you speak of, which is emerging in the US, is emerging to reclaim what's been lost. But in Pakistan, they still have it, so nobody questions it. So they don't need these podcasters. They don't need the bro culture at all, because they already have it. So
mm,
yeah,
mm.
anyone who speaks against it or fights against it is denigrated or whatever. But that only happens when they rise against it. Otherwise, it's status quo. It's the work as usual. And that is why there are this movement called the Aurat March. Aurat is basically Urdu for woman, and a lot of men criticize Aurat marches, and I'm like, they're just asking for equal rights, and there is nothing wrong with it. And but then that's because that's where a lot of them feel threatened, that they might take their advantage from them. So yeah, so when that happens, they do speak up, but otherwise, no.
Yeah. Well, and do you feel like your journey with writing your books, do you feel like by exploring, not just the really steamy aspects of like an affair, but like even just a woman who claims access to see herself as someone who wants and needs to be desired and, right, specifically isn't getting love from her husband and like knows that she has access and has agency to be loved, to be desired, to be wanted, helped you understand aspects of like why it's important to be open around topics about intimacy, desire, sexuality. Because it seems like what you're saying here of us is that like you realized in Pakistan, there's not a lot of spaces where these conversations are had in the open. So it kind of creates this system of secrecy or privacy and can like really, negatively impact
Yeah.
um people from not being able to express themselves, but it also kind of like maintains a male dominated space because, who are the ones who are like making the decisions at the end of the day in like these patriarchal cultures. So like, what did you learn from like the importance of exploring all of these different sexual intimacy narratives?
That's an excellent question, actually. And yes, you're right. I think that there aren't a lot of avenues here to talk about it. Certainly, you can't really talk about it on national television, and you can't really talk about it in public or in rallies or in speeches or whatever. The only way you can raise these issues is through literature and through maybe conversation in private parties or events. But obviously, raising this issue in private parties and events wouldn't really do much, rather than preaching to the choir in a way, but or preaching to the converted. But with literature, you do have that unique opportunity to talk about these things and read and reach a wider audience, and most importantly, reach people while they are at, in that age where it can help shape their views, because a lot of people are brought up in these uh, households and in these households where abuse is the norm, where everything like male dominance or patriarchy, all of that is the norm. And by the time they get to their late 20s or 30s, the views are already established, and nothing can change their views. They might say that yes, we are changing or whatever, but really they're not. So the best way to change them is during a time when things can be changed, and literature can do that. And people who read my books in late teens or early 20s or whatever, a lot of them have come up to me and said that your book changed my view of this certain thing or that certain thing. And I think that is where literature helps, and that is what a very important function of literature.
I'm so curious, what has your family said about your books?
My family, only a few people in my family. I have a very large family, so I probably have around 50 people in my family from both sides. More than that, maybe 60, 65. So I think out of them, probably five or six have read my books. My parents have not read my books. My brothers haven't read my books. Some of my cousins have. Some of my aunts have, but they all love it. They all love my books. For some, I mean, like I said, where I was brought up, my household, we are an exception to the norm. So they would naturally like this kind of stuff because they were brought up around these kind of things. So, but what I really find amazing is that over 90% of my readers have also liked my stuff, and they've gone on to say good things about it, which I find very surprising because it's not a given that the Pakistani public would like my work, because it is very radical in many ways. So, but the fact that they have, and you've read In the Company of Strangers, but No Honor is even more controversial because it talks about honor killings, and the fact that that has got received universal acclaim in Pakistan is, speaks a lot.
Yeah. Well, and what have been some things that your international readers have told you that like surprised or excited you about like why it's so important that your work is getting such national acclaim and recognition, like why it's so important that it reaches outside of Pakistan?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I've been very fortunate with my readers, and most of my readers, they've come back and said that, oh, actually, we didn't know that this kind of thing existed in Pakistan, that things could be like this in Pakistan, and how similar Pakistan is to the world we live in, and all of that. So that always makes me happy. But also, I have written, like I said, I've written about very controversial issues like honor killings and all of that. So, and then those readers have come back to tell me that we are glad that you did not sort of dramatize it or sensationalize the topic just to get score brownie points or to get attention, or they said that you've written it in a very sensitive manner. And I think at the end of the day, that is what matters, to get the point across without sensationalizing it. like that. So yeah.
Yeah, especially like for a Western audience where, like you've said, so much of Pakistan and other countries outside of the West get sensationalized or exoticized. Like
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like there's a version of In the Company of Strangers that could have been written more from like that Western colonial perspective, like E.M. Forster's A Passage to India, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, um, the white woman uh claims that the brown person harassed and assaulted her and like makes up these allegations. And it's just like furthers this otherness of like differences. But like you're saying, what you show us is, oh, like the West isn't the only one that has modern cosmopolitan cities or access to culture, to art, to uh, different civilizations. And what has it been like just like understanding that you're writing maybe not intentionally because it's like a part of your upbringing, but you're writing with like all of that baggage of like Western writers, like just trying to create these narratives of otherness. Like I mentioned E.M. Forster, who I, really enjoy his novels, but,
Yeah.
he's part of like Rudyard Kipling. I mean, there's so many who do this kind of colonial narrative.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
No, you're absolutely. That's again a very good question. And before I answer that, you may have
Yeah.
seen that there was a lady who just came in, and
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
my mom. And I was like, if she knew that I was exposing childhood secrets on the podcast, she'd be very upset. So,
Well, I don't think you said anything too, damning.
well, I did mention the fact that I used to get a slap if I got bad grades, but but yeah, she's very sweet now, and now occasionally we do. My brothers and I, we sometimes do talk back, and we feel bad about it, but they don't say anything now. So, but yeah, to answer your question about that, you see, it's very important that we write about these issues because so many white people have already written about these things, and it's very important to break those stereotypes. I mean, nothing against white people. I mean, I'm not gonna say that everyone who's written about this subject is wrong. Again, that is you're basically generalizing, which one shouldn't do. So I think there are a lot of white authors who've written very good accounts as well, who've tackled these subjects very sensitively, and they do tackle these subjects very sensitively, especially when it comes to historical fiction. If you look at historical fiction, you see that a lot of these authors, when they write about the British India, you'll find that not they do tread carefully, and you can tell that they have hired sensitivity readers here and all of that stuff. So they do take care. So it's to say that they all write about stereotypes would be wrong, but I feel that it's very important to add our voices, our own ethnic voices, or whatever, call them whatever, to the narrative as well, so that we get a chance to talk about our culture as well, and not just allow others to talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's why I don't I try to write about Pakistani. My characters are mostly Pakistani. I do introduce. I've written one novel now that has a central white character, but this is after like years and years of writing experience that I have felt brave enough to do that. Otherwise, I've never felt brave enough to add write about a white character or say any other character like maybe a Hispanic. I just don't feel equipped enough to write about them. But
Mm.
now I have. And I think the same is true for them, that if they feel they're well equipped enough, then why not?
Yeah, well, I feel like my last question has to just be, you know, what do you consider the genre of your novels? I'm thinking, I know you're working on a new one, like you've just said, but In the Company of Strangers and In the Shadows of Love, the follow-up,
Yeah.
uh, do you see it as a blend of romance, historical fiction, psychological realism? Like, how would you explain the genre of your novels?
Well, I would, at least for In the Company of Strangers and The Shadows of Love, they're definitely commercial fiction. So I try to write books that are page turners and that people can really, go through very quickly, and then, but still stuff that stays on in their minds.
Mhm.
That is the kind I want to write about. I mean, I am promoted as upmarket literary by my publisher, but I think just between you and me and our viewers,
Yeah.
I feel I'm more commercial.
Mm.
So yeah,
Well, and what I love is that, like, yes, there's romance, there's steaminess, there's a lot of historical elements with Pakistani culture, but like, it's such a page turner that it also like gets into that psychological
yeah.
realm. And I think it kind of makes sense after talking with you and having everyone listen and watch this, which is you've been inspired by so much throughout your own reading life that you kind of like have created a hybrid of sorts that like speaks to, I always feel like the most um interesting literature, in my opinion, to the public is like one that can't just be easily defined in one genre. Like it's something that just speaks to the human experience. And I feel like you've done that so well, um, of us in your writing is like creating something that speaks to human questions and to everyone, no matter what their identity is. Like that is the purpose of an author. And you do it so fabulously.
Well, that is very kind of you to say. And I think that if I have achieved that, then I have done my duty as a writer, because that is, at the end of the day, that is what we write for. That the reader should, most of all, it should be entertaining, that the reader should be entertained, but also that the reader should learn something from that particular culture or from that book. They should end up with some sort of a moral lesson, maybe. And I think if you do all of the above, then you've written a good book. And if you say that about my work, then I guess I'm very grateful and very happy to hear that. But
Well, no,
yeah,
it's true. And I think like to me that's where I think it's so important to amplify writers of all different identities and backgrounds. But like, even as a scholar, like where I work a lot on queer literature, like I even get frustrated if like my work is only seen as like something to read during Pride Month in the
yeah,
States.
yeah,
And you like get pigeonholed. Like, well, this author belongs to this genre, like this category, or this author can only, you know, do events during this month and when it
yeah.
focuses on Black History Month. And I think like we do a disservice when we like box people into these
You're
categories.
absolutely right. And this is exactly how people treat literature from other countries as well. That especially you see this a lot in the publishing industry. And yes, you're right with LGBTQ literature. You often wonder why did it only shine a light on it when it's Pride Month or whatever? Why can't it be year round? Why can't you shine a light on authors of other backgrounds? all year round. And this is the thing, they'll have that token Pakistani author, they'll have that token some other country's author, and they're like, oh, this is enough, this is more than enough. Now Pakistan is 250 million people now. It is not enough to just have one author and then forget about the country, the rest of the authors in the country. I think that is where they do a huge disservice, and you're right. And while we're on the topic, I really want to give a shout out to one of these books that I've read. It's by, you may have heard of the author Seth Insua. His book, it's called Human Animal, and it's a really, really good book, and it will really appeal to you. It's about queer identity and all of that. So I think it was nominated for the British Book Awards as well this year. It's a really good book.
And it's called Human Animal?
Human, animal. Yeah.
Human, animal. Okay, I'm gonna look it up. No, thank you. I love adding to my, to be read pile. Well, Awais, this was a pleasure to have you on. I loved talking with you, and I feel like we instantly became literary friends. And I appreciate you doing this late. You're wrapping the end of your day. I'm like perked up on coffee here. But how can everyone out there get their hands on In the Company of Strangers, and follow you?
Yeah, well, I am very much active on social media. So the best places to get me are Instagram. So Awais Khan author. And same for Twitter, same for Facebook. And if you want to buy my book, it's available from Barnes and Noble, Waterstones, all the usual bookshops. But if it's easier for you to order via Amazon, then I will not hold it against you.
Well, yes. I mean, I love though. Yes, try to get your hands on, Awais's work from a bookstore, and then if you can't, it's available. And I think too, there's audiobook versions as well.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's available as audiobooks as well. Yeah, all 4 of my books.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. And I am looking right now on Barnes and Noble, and his works come up right away. So make sure here in the States, Barnes and Noble's one of our favorites. But if you have an independent bookstore, have them order it. So In the Company of Strangers is just a fabulous, you're going to love every second of it. It's a wonderful book. And I was just so happy that, I got you on the podcast.
The honor is all mine. And thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I've been looking forward to being here for a very long time.
Oh, good.
Yeah, if you ever find yourself in Pakistan, you must let me know. So
I will. No, I know. I've wanted to travel to Pakistan, and it sounds like Lahore has a lot to offer. I mean, I can't even imagine, all of the different stores and restaurants. And I mean, to have 12 million people, you have to have a lot to support the community.
It's crazy. It's really, I mean, we have Mughal architecture, we have colonial architecture, and then obviously modern architecture. So there's something for everyone in Lahore.
And probably a transit system that's amazing.
Oh, yeah. We have a very good transit system as well. I mean, we can hop on the orange train. It's the orange line, and it takes you across town. So,
Yeah, well, and that's why, you've helped open my eyes, too, to, immigrants who come from Pakistan who are living in the Northeast, but even living near New York City, if they're now in a town that's only 40,000 people, that's nothing if they're coming from a place like Lahore. They're probably like, oh, this is such a small community.
That is like our neighborhood. Basically just a couple of streets in the neighborhood, and that's it.
Yeah, we're for those who grew up in the US, living right by New York City, they think it's the busiest place they've ever been to. So perspective is interesting.
Our small towns are 300,000. So there's the place my father comes from. It's Dera Ismail Khan. It's 300,000 people, and we talk about it like it's some backwater town. It's not actually. It's a pretty big city.
So in the US, if you went to a place and there was only 5,000 in that town, that must be a really interesting experience.
I love these North American small towns. I'm absolutely in love with them. But yeah, I need to explore them more whenever I do visit again.
Yes, and everyone who lives in those small towns, they know everyone and they know everyone's business for good and
Yeah,
bad.
and I mean, we are 15 million people here, and we know everyone, and we know each other's business as well. So just go
I think
figure.
that's just the human experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Awais, this was so wonderful having you, and thank you again. Can't wait to have you back on with this new
Absolutely.
novel you're working on. It sounds fabulous.
That would be great. And
Yes,
thank you so
thank
much for having me.
you. Bye bye.